This is 2024, one of the first meetings of AA in 2024. In addition to that, that's almost the shortest introduction I've ever heard, especially for myself. But I thank my good buddy for inviting me. This has been a planned occasion with us. We've been praying about it for a long time. Jim checks on me regular to make sure I'm staying sober, and checks with the home group, making sure my home group is keeping me accountable. So I'm glad to be here tonight. Let me tell you what I've been got on my mind just since your group, and I love this group because maybe many of you, we've been in groups together. And let me tell you something amazing that came out during the prayer. Pam led us out in the hallway in a prayer, which is normally done in a three-legacy group. The group prays for the speaker to get out of the way of God and for the group to listen up. And she did a great job doing that. And what she mentioned was just a little bit about the power of AA and old relationships. And I, ever since walking out there and coming back in here, I've been thinking about that. Oh, this is an amazing to me. I left the bar over 34 years ago, and I was a good bar member. I drank there regular. I was a very heavy ticker because I'm on an unlimited expense account that I cheat on. So I would say I was just well loved and respected in most of the bars that I went to. They knew what I wanted to drink and gave me special privileges and excused some of my behavior. But from the moment I quit going in those bars, I've never, not once, received a phone call. Hey, where are you? What's wrong? What happened? And we miss you. We miss your pocketbook. But anyway, our parents' prayer just shot an arrow to my heart about I've got relationships with people in here 30 plus years. Chuck Kraft came from Raleigh. I knew his first sponsor over there in Raleigh and had gone to meetings with him. And we've been in groups together since that. 30 plus years. My sober buddy, Kevin, who drove tonight, we're world famous in Rocky Mount because of a newspaper article that we participated in, and they named us Sober Buddies, and we've been that way ever since. And some of the ladies that are in this group, we've known each other 20 plus years. I won't go further with that because they're sensitive about age. But again, I'm at home, and I welcome the people I don't know that I want to meet, and new guys and that kind of thing. So anyway, Pam prayed that I would calm down and get settled and be able to let you know about my experience, strength, and hope. I'm going to try to do that to the best of my ability. I'm going to start with, I know why I'm here. My name is Paige W. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety birth date is March the 31st, 1989. I am a member of the Came to Believe group. My daughter-in-law gave me a little pin to remind me that I am a member of that Came to Believe group. And so I wear it proudly and with great affection. So I'm a member of that group, and we're very much alike. I won't bore you with all the details, but we meet twice a week at St. Paul Methodist. We meet on Tuesdays and Fridays. Many of you have been there and spoken there and are there regularly. So we love that. We love the social exchange that we have between AA community that we have. Remember, the first word in the textbook is we, W-E, and it starts with a big capital W. And why that's important, and why it's important to me, I will tell you in sharing my story that how depended on myself, I just about died and would have died unless I'd found you. And I didn't find you. I was forced to get here. I know some of you. I even sponsored some people that knew they were alcoholic when they were drinking, and bless their hearts, they didn't even take the morning drink, and they came in here early. And I think they missed one of the best drinks, if you miss that. Well, anyway, I'm a member of the Came to Believe group. We meet twice a week. We're a big book study group. First 3 Tuesdays of the month, we studied the textbook cover to cover. Amy plagued us with saying it takes us 2.5 years. I don't even know if that's really true or not. We're going to find out, because I started keeping a record back on 2/14/2023 to find out how long it takes. But she says it takes us 2.5 years. Maybe so. We also study the 12 traditions. And we do one a month out of the 12 and 12, the other book that Bill Wilson and the fellowship gave us. And we're pretty consistent with that. We do one a month. In the course of a year, we finish all 12. When and if there's a 5th Tuesday, we study AA history, just believing that if you forget your history, you may be doomed to repeat it. And there's other reasons for studying AA history. If we got a killer malady, and that's exactly what we have, a hopeless state of mind and body. And if when I got a medical problem, I go find out everything I can about it and get even second opinions. I read about it and I try to follow the doctor's advice. Well, that's what I've been trying to do by following the advice and the instructions of the home group and sponsorship since I got forced to come here. So anyway, on Fridays, we're a study group, and the chairperson for that month picks a topic, introduces the topic, and calls on the membership to share their experience, strength, and hope with it. And then on the last Friday of every month, we have what we have tonight that you have weekly is an open speaker meeting, and we invite our speakers sometimes a year in advance. We did Madeline a month. She was our December speaker, and we got her a year in advance. She's a busy woman. She had to break some bones to get there, had some dental work to get there, but she came and she had a powerful message the last of December. We're so grateful for her. So anyway, we love Madeline. So anyway, that's our home group. I think most of us that I know have got sponsors, and some of us we're in the same family of sponsorship, and that's both good. Maybe it's all good. Well, let me tell you where I'm going to start. A few years ago, I've had the same sponsor for almost 33 years. There's been an interruption in that time period. One time when, if you follow Scripture, a sheep will sometimes drift off from the flock and it gets lost. And I did that a couple of times. And the shepherd, in that case, the sponsor, hooked me back into the fold, but mostly I've been sponsored by the same man all this time, except for one time I wandered off, and I ended up in another man's pasture, and he taught me a lot, and here's what I want to share with you. I know that a lot of us come to this place with this job, and we go right into what we think is, we tell our story, we like, what was I like, what happened, and what am I like now because of what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me? Well, this new sponsor, who I tried to stay in compliance with, had me do several things. We took the steps again, but here's what he's asked me to do. And he's passed away recently. I got on the big plane and went to his funeral not too long ago. But here's what he asked me to do that I'm going to continue to honor, which I've been doing for some time now. So it says that an AA member, each individual of Alcoholics Anonymous, can describe in his own language and his own manner of speaking of how he established his relationship with God. Well, I'm going to close with the book with that, but I want to just overstate why that's important. I got here not understanding that I was an alcoholic. I got here not understanding what alcoholism is. Now, I drank for 30 plus years. I started as a kid at 13, drank for 30 years. I even thought successfully. A little bit of the time in the United States Navy, through colleges and degree work, through a profession, through a failed marriage, through a relationship at work that almost put me in a federal prison. I'm calling all of that successful drinking, which any fool would know that's not very successful. But anyway, I called it that. So anyway, I come to this organization called Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of the stuff they told me, I won't bore you with all the details, but I was taught that frothy emotional appeals has no effect on what's wrong with me, that I've got a malady, that does not work. And I said, well, what is that? Well, that's when the ex-wife, and I preface the ex, begs you to come straight home from work and let's carry the kid to the ball game, or let's go grocery shopping, or let's just get home together and be together. We're married, for God's sakes. And when you can't do that, and you want to say, okay, sure, I'll do that, but I don't. I get off work and something happens. 2 days, 2 hours, a week away, I may come home. Anyway, frothy emotional appeals won't fix me. The next thing they told me, and I thought I was a pretty smart guy, and most people come to AA thinking they're pretty smart. I think I found that out. I've had more luck sponsoring unemployed house painters than I have had sponsoring lawyers and doctors and architects. I still sponsor two doctors right now, and it's a struggle to overcome what the intellect thinks you can do. It works with most things, but this is a matter of the heart, not the mind. And so we're taught that the intellect will not help me stay sober, will not get me sober. Then it's so boldly, then it says, no human power can affect my alcoholism. Now, that statement needs to be explained and explored a little bit, in that God works through you, and all of us, and so we are affected by human beings, especially our home group members, our sponsorship, but God's working through them just as He's working through us tonight. So then I learned that what's important is, if you leave here tonight wondering how Paige got sober, then I have been totally unsuccessful at this podium, because I'm going to try to tell you how God rescued me from the trash heap that I was on, the dump that I had been living in. Now, the dump doesn't always mean you're living under a bridge or shantytown or something. I live in the same house that I got sober in 34 years ago. It's a home today. I lived in a house 34 years ago. And so it's not that. The dump is inside. I can't believe that I would go to the mirror every morning and shave and not see the corruption and the shame and the guilt and the remorse and the filth that was in my life with the problem that's in my mind. So when I was introduced to the solution, both a mental and a physical malady and problem, and then was told that only God can help me, I said, oh my gosh, I'm in real trouble. I don't believe in God. I hadn't turned to God for help for 42 years. I have done everything I can to stay away from Him. I don't like Him. Look how He had me raised in the home that I was raised in, a poor home. I'm not gonna compete with anybody in here about what is poor. However, I will tell you my definition of it. When a little boy about that big is told by his mom, who he just thinks is God, loves her right into the grave, is told by his mom to carry the bucket next door and borrow a bucket of water, because we don't have food, we don't have electricity, we don't have gas, we don't have food in the pantry, we don't even have water. And I would, as a little boy, go next door and ask our good neighbor for a bucket of water. I can't tell you, I can't to this moment describe to you the emotion I felt as a kid about having to do that, how embarrassed I was. I don't even know what I'm embarrassed about. I can't spell the word embarrassed. Yet I felt something. I felt less than. I felt ashamed. And I just felt terrible. But that kind lady never said a word about, my gosh, you're not even clean, little boy. And she would say something like this: I've overcooked tonight, and would you do me a favor and carry this plate of food back home for your mom? I made this and I got too much of it. And so not only would I come home with the bucket of water, I'd come home with food. Did she know that we didn't have any food in the house? I don't know, but I suspect she did. I know she did, and so forth. So anyway, that's where I come from as a young kid with my definition of being poor. That's how I was raised, and I blame God for that. I had a wealthy grandparent, and I didn't know it was a resentment. The man saved my life several times by having the money to bail me out of trouble, but I blamed him for letting us live in this home with his son, with the way he treated us. My father was a terrible alcoholic. He'd come home, that was my view of alcoholism, he'd come home drunk. When he would come home, we don't have many of them in AA today, they're called bender drinkers. That is, they would just drink for weeks and months and just be gone. And then they may go weeks and months and even years without drinking again. But trust me, and trust the malady of alcoholism, they will drink again without God intervening. So my father would be gone, and that's how we got into those desperate conditions at home, where we didn't have utilities, we didn't have food, and so forth. Now I'm the youngest in a family of 5. I got 3 wonderful sisters and 1 brother, myself. I can tell you another definition of being poor. Fill the bathtub one time. All 5 of you take a bath in that water, in that tub. I'm going to tell you, and we did it in 2s so that somebody could wash you back. And yeah, and 5's an unequal number. So in any case, that's what happened. But my father would come home, and I'm going to be very brief with this. My father would come home when he would come home, and he'd come home. Now, I didn't learn these words until I read this book. This is the textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous. And restless, irritable, and discontent, full of shame and guilt and remorse. Now, I bet my father didn't know he came home like that. We certainly didn't. We know that he came home mean and drunk. We know that he came home and beat my mom to the floor, beat my sisters, my brother, and myself to the floor, wrecked the house, maybe pee in the corner, and then pass out. My good mom would get up, fix herself if needed, fix the girls if needed, fix my brother, fix me, clean the mess up, and drag him off to the bedroom. We had 2 of them. He slept in one. The 5 of us kids, the 3 girls, my brother and myself, slept in the other one. And my mom slept on the couch in what we call the living space. Little small box. Well, that didn't happen just once or occasionally. That was regular and routinely. So even more quickly, I'm going to say, let me stop here for a moment. My good buddy Jim asked me years ago, he said, Paige, do you know what makes a good AA talk? Well, I start thinking, well, I know there's lots of things that he says. 45 minutes. Now look, there's no way I'm going to be able to comply with that. He took too long even getting me to the podium, used up part of my time. So anyway, now I'm serious. I'm going to be on time. But anyway, that's what he says. I love him for it. So in any case, I decided I can't grow up any longer like this. God ain't going to do anything about it. I'm going to intervene myself. I planned that I would stop it. I would just kill my father. That's the little answer I came up with. And so I went about that crazy thinking. Later on, it might even point to my character that I don't only think about things, I take action on most of the things I think about. And so I planned to kill him, and I made that attempt. And it wasn't pretty, and it cost my soul quite a bit of sorrow and anguish for many years, and it hurt him. I don't know. I can't speak to the issue of spirituality, but I can tell you that when you spend about a year recovering from broken bones, it bothered him as well. So anyway, I can tell you one more thing. I might even send it off to AA to be introduced into the 5th edition. We know that frothy emotional pills don't work. We know that the education doesn't work. The intellect doesn't work. We know that human power doesn't work. We also know for a fact that being beat half to death with a baseball bat will not stop you drinking. Let me tell you where it was effective. That man never, ever touched my mom or my sisters or my brother or myself again. It didn't stop his drinking, but it sure stopped his behavior. Anyway, that's enough about that. I'm well aware. The first drink for me came totally unaware. I'm the last man in this room that should be here tonight having anything knowledge of drinking. I've told you a little bit of how I grew up and my view of alcohol. I hated it. I can remember to this day, I was a good Boy Scout, and that's the Boy Scout oath symbol right there. I swear, that's what you do in the Boy Scouts. I swear, Mom, I will never be like our father. I will never take a drink, and I will never beat a woman or children. I will never do that. And I meant it then, I mean it today. And thank God he's held me to that. But he's allowed my alcoholism to make me a liar, a cheat, a thief, and a whore. And he's allowed every bit of that, yet however, he's always kept me corralled up to where when he brought me in, he did so in a good fashion. We're going to get to that as well. So anyway, at age 13, I took my first drink. I was out in the backyard with a bunch of kids, 3 of us in back. We were camping out one hot summer night. Somehow or another, as poor as all of us were, we were not the poor family in the neighborhood. We lived in a poor neighborhood. All of us were poor. We didn't know the difference. That's not a true statement. We knew that other people didn't live the way we lived, but we existed. And I'm not saying that we didn't grow up with the most love in the whole wide world. My sisters, I wouldn't be alive today without the care of my oldest sister. She became what my mother couldn't be and what my father was not. And she protected our family all the way to now. She's the matriarch of our family. I think that I'm running the family now, but I'm not. She is. She's passing on instructions to me. So in any case, so at age 13, we get enough money. Actually, I know where it came from. We stole the bottles from one supermarket, 2 cents a piece. The crates, the wood crate that held 24 bottles was 12 cents. And we stole enough bottles from one supermarket, carried them under the cover of dark to another supermarket and sold them again. We stole them again and went back and sold them again. We did that till we had enough money. We got a 6-pack of Pat's Blue Ribbon beer and 1 pack of cigarettes, a pack of Kents. And we're camping out, 4 of us. And I do know that we had trouble opening the cans. The guy didn't get us that magic device. Back then they called it a church key, of all things. Somebody in this group's got a real church key, but back then a church key opened cans of beer. We didn't get one, but we had a screwdriver and a hammer. We got in that beer. And I ended up drinking most of that beer that night. The other guys, for some reason, just didn't like it. I smoked most of those cigarettes. We all had been stealing cigarettes and picking up cigarettes off the street. And when people flip them out, we'd pick them up, clean them up, and smoke them. Now we're smoking real long, clean ones. That was great. And so also there that night, that first spiritual experience for me, and I do that knowing full well what Herbert Spencer in this textbook says about what is a spiritual experience. It's an event that radically changes how a man or a woman thinks or acts. And that's exactly what happened with part of a 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer for this kid at age 13. I drank most of it. I smoked some of those cigarettes. I had my first blackout, and I got in my first major trouble with the authorities. I got later that night. I got accused and charged with and found guilty of shooting all the windows out of a National Guard armory a few blocks away with a BB gun. That was serious then. It'd be super serious now. Homeland Security would be all over Wilson and Rocky Mount trying to solve that puzzle and everything. It was just a drunk kid having fun. In any case, it didn't quite get handled that way. The other major thing that happened that night is I was a member of a women's haters group in our little neighborhood. We had all of us guys, there's about 12 of us. We belonged to this group, a women's haters group. I don't think we had a real name for it. It was just a women's haters group. Not a one of us qualified by definition. We all loved our mom and our sisters. Some of us loved our school teachers, who back then were mostly ladies, and grandmothers. We loved women. We even loved y'all across the street. We'd be seeing you, and we'd always have to turn and go the other way because we're so embarrassed. We don't know how to talk to you. You got some kind of power. Still do. Anyway, in this little women's haters club up in our treehouse, we had a treehouse. We had all kinds of magazines. They call it today pornography. Most of it is available right here on this telephone. But back then, you had to have this magazine, and we'd had them. I don't know where we got them. And we would do just like this, looking at this and say, oh my gosh, I've done that, or I want to do this, or I'm going to do this. You know, we were just stupid. We were lying. They knew we were lying. We knew we were lying. Everybody was lying, and that's what we did. So anyway, to this day, I can't explain what happened, but we had a member of our little neighborhood women's group, haters group, was a girl. The best I can remember, she was a member in good standing. She came to our little camp out and stayed most of the night with us. I can't explain how that happened. I'm in a blackout, remember? Anyway, as it turns out, that that night, age 13, I had that spiritual experience. It was the locomotive of that was the booze, the part of that 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, and then those cigarettes, and then to have that relationship with a girl, a lady, a woman, it just overpowered me. And I knew when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and we got to step 9, when it said something to the effect that you intuitively know how to handle things, I knew, that was a Wednesday night we were camping out, I knew that I would do this again and again and again if I could. I was too young to go live under a bridge. I was 13 years old, living at home, trying to go to school, which I didn't complete, and but I knew that I would, and if it worked on that Wednesday night, it would work on Sunday morning or Monday afternoon, anytime that I could get my hands on it. And I drank as often as I could, when I could, after that. That was not a daily drinker. That's just how it all began. And I knew I would repeat it. The next morning, after that miracle night, knock at the door, the police. This is the second time the police has knocked on my mom's door. The first time, my father was left for dead out in the yard, and a neighbor found him, and they knocked on the door. I know many of us, maybe on YouTube or something like that, read about maybe what went on in the 50s or the 60s are different than what goes on in 2024 and so forth, how the world has changed. I don't know what would happen if they found my father this morning the way they did back then. But back then, my grandfather, my neighbors, my parents, my mom, my sisters, my brother, the police, our pastor, nobody said a word to me about what have you done. And nobody locked me up. Nobody put me on medicine. Nobody locked me into a hospital institution. Nobody said a word. I think most of them said what I said. By golly, if he does it again, I will not fail. And to this day, there's never been any legal problems with what happened. And I don't believe that can happen today. I just don't. I would pray that it would not. In any case, that week, that night camping out changed my life. Like I said, I didn't go out and become a daily drunk. I couldn't. It took time. I ran away from home at 17, joined the Navy, lied about my age on that. Because we don't have the computers we got today, I was in the United States Navy. Already had my head shaved, and all my personal property, which consisted of a pants, a shirt, was thrown away, and I'm now wearing Navy issue uniform and so forth. Anyway, when they called up with me, I got disciplined. I got set back on it. I didn't get kicked out of the Navy, and it didn't get on my record. And they did give me 2 extra years on my enlistment. So that was the penalty, which turned out to be a reward. In any case, I went on to live life, and like I said, I thought I lived it successfully. I went off and joined the Navy, and then I went into the merchant service, and then I went into heavy construction. Ended up back in North Carolina. Married a little high school sweetheart that I didn't know I had. I was just told that she was, and we got married. We dated one time. We went to Raleigh on a double date with my brother, with his wife, and this wife had this best girlfriend that they're telling me she was my high school sweetheart. I don't remember that. I drank during high school. In any case, we went to see Gone with the Wind in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I got what I always did. I overdrank and went into a blackout, and when I got home, I'd asked this little blind date to marry me, and a few months later, we did. And so, anyway, by that time, I was able to let my drinking not completely ruin my life, but by age 7 of that marriage, year 7, I could no longer validate those marriage vows. I could not honor them. I could not be truthful to them. And I started doing what a man like me does. The textbook talks about he finds a friendly, a companion to drink with, and yada, yada, yada. You know what I'm all saying. In any case, that marriage drifted on for a total of 16 years and ended, and so forth. Ended badly. When she asked me to leave, and that she was leaving me, and I agreed. I said, how are we going to do it? She said, I want half, and we'll call it a day. And my understanding was, you want half? By golly, I'll give you half. had a nice home on Lake Gaston. I went down to the boathouse, had a real nice, it was a Poland. That was a good chainsaw in its day. But I had a good chainsaw. I cranked it up, made sure I had plenty of fuel in it, plenty of oil for the blade. I walked back up to that house, and I asked her one more time, how much you want? Well, I want half. And I cranked that chainsaw. I defy you to not wet your pants if you hear a chainsaw running in a home. It is the most terrible noise you can imagine. Well, I went from object to object, and I said, you want half of that? Yes. I don't know when I had planned to get to the house, but that was on the agenda after the stuff, which I truly valued. I was a stuff person back then. I believed in materialism. I'd have got to the house. And the problem was we didn't have those little inexpensive tubs that were made out of plastic back then. We had the metal tub, which was made out of porcelain. That wreaks havoc on the chainsaw blade. So it ruined my chainsaw. Anyway, it set the tone for the rest of that divorce. It was not pleasant. So I told you about when I came up here that how I was so moved by Pam's prayer about the relationships that exist inside of Alcoholics Anonymous, and because of the principles that we try to live by and to practice, that we have the relationships that we have today. 8 years later, after being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, God so moved in that woman's heart that she allowed me to make amends to not only her, but to her mother. That's my mother-in-law. There's all kinds of jokes about a son and his mother-in-law. Most of them are not nice. They're not usually good relationships, and mine was awful. My mother-in-law, just purity, was so sick that she had married me. I don't know what she thought was thinking, or I just don't know to this day. But anyway, she had also got in the middle of that divorce and had carried me to court to sue me, and I countersued her, and I just about bankrupted her. And that didn't sit well with the rest of the family or her, and that made making amends terribly hard. Not too hard for God, right living, and the steps 8 and 9, and being willing to go to any length to make things right. I could not go say I'm sorry to a woman that I cut her property in half with, or that I threatened her with a chainsaw, or to a mother-in-law that I forced into almost bankruptcy. Being sorry will not cut it. But they gave me the opportunity to practice the principles in this textbook. And I've been doing that from then to now. And today we have a relationship. Now, Kevin, my good buddy, sober buddy, said he came to AA because of marriage counseling and so forth. I never wanted, from that day to this day, wanted to get back with that woman. She went on to marry, some 10 years later, a better man. And we helped bury him about 2 years ago. So we did get a relationship so that we could be mom and dads to a son, and the best grandparents in the whole wide world to our 3 grandchildren. We have a relationship today around that, a son and grandchildren. And God has allowed that and blessed that in that it's profitable and fruitful. And so that's the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyway, real quickly, why am I here? Finally, and I hear all the time that booze quit working. I don't even understand that. I don't understand it when you tell me that. I just can't comprehend it. I can't understand how you quit on your own for periods of time. Why would you do that? I can't understand. Why would you hide it from yourself? I just can't understand that. Or that you didn't drink at certain times or on certain days of the week. You didn't drink. Why in the world? I don't understand that. My alcoholism would not allow that. I would drink as often as I could, as much as I could on every occasion. And so the other thing that forced me to get here is I'm working with the most loving, caring employers in the whole wide world. They're in the grave today by just a few years, but I was part of their family. They loved this man. They loved me. And they put up with my alcoholism. They documented it in a book and turned that book over to a man that ran a treatment center, the CEO of it. And they put me in his care. They did that under the penalty of I'd gone off on I had a very special job with the company. I had a tremendously high budget to run the department, millions and millions of dollars. I built buildings all over this country, mostly in 7 states for this corporation, hundreds of buildings that they own, everything from restaurants to whole communities. They own whole development communities down at the Outer Banks and country clubs and golf courses and hotels and marinas and boat works. And they were just tremendously wealthy. They allowed me to be a part of that. And I went out and I had use of a company plane to do that, to help me do that. I went off on the company plane and they had to explain to me, you go off and you come back. You go off and you come back. That's how that's supposed to work. I didn't understand it. I'm a blackout drinker. I am terribly disappointed that AA International World Services canceled our international that was going to be in Detroit. I went to the first international when I got to AA in Seattle, Washington in 1990. I did some horrific damage in Seattle, Washington, Vancouver, Canada, while I was in the Navy. And going back there as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous was so powerful. And I was looking forward to going back to where I got into my most serious trouble was in Detroit. I went to Detroit and couldn't come home. I started uncontrollably drinking, blackout drinking, and I just couldn't get out of there. And when I did, I got challenged with, Paige, you either get the help that we're going to offer you or we're going to have to lock you up. And so I said, well, how long are you going to give me to think about it? Next shows you what an idiot they were dealing with. They gave me 3 days. They gave me 3 days to think about it. And I took all 3 days. Here's the great part. I read to you in here how every member can share how he met God and what God did for him. And I told you what God has done for me. He picked me up and removed me from what I like to call the scrap heap out of the dump with the way I was living inside. I went home for those 3 days. And on the 3rd day, the morning of the 3rd day, turned out to be a Friday. I don't know if I slept during those 3 days. I don't know if I ate during those 3 days. Here's what I do know. I didn't drink during those 3 days. That's the first miracle because I'm a daily drinker. And from that talk that I had with a CEO and a 17-year member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't remember a word he said other than something about step 2 that he might have talked about changed my life. Step 2, the principle behind that is hope, H-O-P-E. I went to that meeting hopeless, L-E-S-S, hopeless, lost. I left that 5-hour meeting. I'm trying to do this in Jim's time frame, 45 minutes. I left there with hope. Now, I didn't know that. It was later in Alcoholics Anonymous when the home group and sponsorship and the textbook began to open me up to my next spiritual experience of what I've experienced being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous was I found out that now I'm hopeful that maybe if it worked for Tom, it'll work for me. And that was the second step. Now, I had to learn there's a step 1. You quit drinking, of all things. And so I had to learn that. I didn't pick that up. I was lost in the fog. So in any case, that morning of the third day of grace, I do remember I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and then I stood up and I fell down. It was just like every bone and every muscle in my body left. And I was like an octopus. I went right down on the floor that I'm going to go home to in about an hour and a half. Fell down on the floor and started crying. Well, what's remarkable about that is I hadn't cried since I'd been that little boy with the baseball bat and growing up in that home. I'm not virginous to any kind of pain and suffering that a man can have. I've had everything that can happen to you happen to me. And so with the way I lived my life and where I lived it and with my drinking, and I started crying. And my father had taught me 3 major big lies, and I had believed them. Said a man doesn't cry. And for all those years, no matter what the event, this man did not cry. Said a man can do anything. And I know for a fact, because of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, you cannot. I'm one of the best architects in this room. Might be the only one. I just say that humbly in that I'm good in my profession. And I've been well served by that education and that position that I had and overpaid during that time period. But if you need some brain surgery, I'm not your person. Maybe Tanya can help you or something. I don't know. Maybe Jim Rounder can help you. I don't know. But I can't. So my father told me a man can do everything, and I found out you can. He also said, son, a man never asks for help. Well, you have a completely different speaker had I not been beaten into submission and asked for help. I'd be dead. And so those truths that I thought, that I believed in, just about killed me. You couldn't have killed me any quicker if you take me out and hang me from a tree. And I was believing such a fallacy of fact. So anyway, I fell to the floor and I started crying. I'm 42 years old, and I've been denouncing God and avoiding God and running from God all that time. I didn't pray. I came to AA not knowing the Lord's Prayer. I had to learn that holding hands with you. I had to go read it and memorize it, put it in my heart. And so I fell on that floor crying, and I said, God, my prayer, God, 3 words, God, help me. My good sober buddy Kevin says, God, get me out of this scrape and I won't do it again. Lawrence says, I may not drink for quite a long time, this afternoon somewhere, maybe. I didn't make any promises or any conditions. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't ask for any particular clause or anything, any kind of special provision. I said, God, help me. Over 34 years ago, that's exactly what happened. We got several books that say, ask, knock, it'll happen. I didn't know that, but I know that now. I do know that simple request has been more than honored. I'm overpaid in every area of my life. I start with physical, I start with mental, I start with financial, and I start with, and I end with spiritually. I now have a relationship with that person, that entity, that being, God, that I ran from and blamed all those years. He's the most perfect, loving Father in the whole wide world. I'm going to close on time for the sake of the recording. 7 years ago, we had a speaker in my home group, our home group, who I just love. He's going to speak for us again this year. He's one of the last old comers in North Carolina, and we've lost Dave Cook and Tom Iverster and Wallace Bryant and Jim Holmes, and the list goes on and on. But we still got Jim Fairclough. And if you got a Friday night, the last Friday of the month, you need, when we post that schedule, you need to come hear him. I would encourage that anyway. So 6 years ago, he referred to a conference parentheses, conference-approved literature pamphlet. I'm going to check your literature rack out tonight to see if you got one. If you don't have one, I'm going to leave one. It's my favorite AA piece of literature. I know that most of us think that page 100 is the greatest fact that AA gives us. And it is a very good hang your sobriety on promise. It is wonderful. And our group closes every meeting with it, and I think you do too. Here's my favorite piece of AA literature. This coming Sunday, I'm not going to read all of this, I'm going to summarize it. In the churches of many of us, that portion of the Gospel of Matthew, which recounts the time when John the Baptist was languishing in the prison of Herod. I know that many of us in this room go into prisons in North Carolina and jails. Kelly's nodding her head. And the jails. My daughter-in-law's even begun to go into jails. Hannah, it's amazing, that attitude of service. Well, John the Baptist is locked up in one. And hearing of the works of his cousin Jesus, he sent 2 of his disciples to say to him, "Art thou he who is to come, or shall we look for another?" I remind you, we're reading AA conference-approved literature. And Christ did as he so often did. He didn't answer them directly, but wanted John to decide for himself. Now, what that means to me is, you can call me an alcoholic like the ex-wife did and like the employer did, but until I admit that in my heart, not my mind, but in my heart, that I've got this terrible malady, I'm still lost. I'm locked up in prison. He wanted John to decide for himself, and so he said to the disciples, "Go and report to John what you have heard and what you have seen. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead rise, and the poor have the gospel told to them." And that means the good news. The gospel means good news. And all those other conditions is the condition I came to Alcoholics Anonymous with. I didn't have eyes to see the truth. I'd look in the mirror and think, well, what a nice guy. I couldn't hear when people said, "Paige, you're a pretty good guy if you just wouldn't drink so much." Most of my friends were saying, "Paige, if you quit drinking so much and take some of this cocaine, you'd be better off." That's the friends I was running with. So, years later, some 34 years later, if you were to ask me, what have I seen? I can tell you only what I have heard and seen. The blind do see, the lame do walk, the lepers are cleansed. By that, our condition is a social outcast condition. Alcoholism, even today, is not a badge of honor. Sobriety is a badge of honor. The deaf hear and the dead rise, and over again, in the middle of the longest day and in the darkest night, the poor in the spirit, that's me, have the good news told to them. God grant that it may always be. Thank you.